Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Her Success podcast. We are the podcast that interviews highly successful and aspirational women, primarily within the engineering and tech world, with the hope of inspiring the next generation of leaders in this space. The podcast is brought to you by Engtal. We are an engineering and technology recruitment firm. If you are interested in partnering with a recruitment firm that truly cares about DEI, please get in contact. If you are an engineer looking for your next position, we would love to hear from you as well. On this episode, we interview Heidi Wyle. Heidi is the founder and CEO of Venti Technologies, an autonomous vehicle firm. She is a serial entrepreneur with a fantastic background. She has a bachelor's from Brown, an MBA from Harvard, and a Ph.D. from MIT. It's a really great conversation, learning about her background. I'm sure you guys will enjoy. Without further ado, let's get to the show. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Her Success podcast. I'm delighted today to be joined by Heidi Wyle. Heidi is the founder and CEO of Venti Technologies. They're a Singapore-based firm, a leading autonomous logistics company. Heidi has an incredible background, phenomenal education. She has a bachelor's from Brown, MBA from Harvard, PhD from MIT, and she's done a number of really cool things in her career. So I'm really excited to dive into her journey and learn a bit more about her background. First and foremost, Heidi, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast, and welcome.
Thank you so much. It's actually a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. First things first, I'd love to just get a bit of an overview of your journey. So I know you did your bachelor's degree at Brown, and then you've done a number of things. So maybe you can just start us there and give us the 50,000-foot view of your career so far.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I was born in a lower socioeconomic environment with parents that were immigrants, and life wasn't particularly solid. And so I always had, I would say, grit. I don't know where the grit gene came from, but I believe that now they've discovered it's actually a gene. So I had
Really?
that. Yes.
Oh.
So I had that, and then also a hunger for learning. I spent my childhood reading books. And so when I graduated from Brown, I went straight off to MIT. It was in my family, the pinnacle of education, I think, towards a solid life that you could depend on. So I did my PhD there. I got elected to its corporation, which was an amazing experience for me all those years ago, coming into people who ran Citicorp and Johnson and so forth. And what that showed me was that these people who took me under their wing to mentor me, that they mattered to me and I could do the same thing. And so actually through my career, which has been just a joy, I have spent a lot of time with that mentoring of the next generation of leaders. But I got into biotech early. I was excited about a new industry that could use technology at that point, obviously the genome, to actually make people's lives better. I loved that. It was new. We were doing low-hanging fruit. And I just absolutely adored traveling around the world with leading experts in the world, speaking with them and helping them from my corporate position to fund their research and build new ideas. That was really fun. And then after that, I decided that it was interesting for me to do something different. So I actually started my own biotech companies. For all the people who are out there, the first one was a failure. The market went in a different direction to government-funded situations for what we were talking about, as opposed to private. And then I founded a company that was actually acquired by Agilent. And that was quite quickly after we had started it. So it was a very strong financial success with an utterly new technology basis. We were mixing the genome with the location that was turning on a gene. So it was a new discovery. And after that, I was finally merging my life with children in addition to my work life. and I had seen a lot, done a lot. And I founded Venti with Professor Daniela Roos of MIT, who runs MIT's largest lab, the Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab. She's amazing. And so we founded that company to bring the new science of autonomy to the world. We actually wanted to make the world a better place for many different reasons. Each of us was driving kids around white knuckled. I had my dad who was in a wheelchair, and an automated wheelchair would have been superb. So we started the company to change the world and also to create the biggest company in the space.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, great journey. I think that's the magic combination. If you can combine a desire to build a great company with also the why of doing good in the world and making the world a better place. Typically, I think those are the companies that really make an impact. To tell us a little bit about Venti, you mentioned kind of how it was founded, but how has the last few years been, and kind of where's it at today?
Sure. Chris, I will say that for people who work 60 or 70 hours a week, it's a really wonderful thing when you really believe in what you're doing. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Mhm.
So the last few years of Venti have been quite an exciting and interesting journey. The company's actually headquartered in the Boston area, and most of our staff right now is in Singapore. And so we have been working with a major partner who is a port operator, and we've been working with them to actually make real the promise of autonomy. And my opinion is that in our space, which is developing autonomous vehicle, AI powered, of course, that's what autonomy is, logistics vehicles for environments where there are heavy logistics. So ports, airports, factories, warehouses. So our goal is in logistics spaces, and I believe this is where the field of autonomy should have started. So we're there, and we have been wrangling the technology for the last few years. And I'll tell you with enormous pleasure that towards the end of 2023, we actually hit a 3-year milestone to deploy our vehicles 24/7 for quite some time. So it has been an enormous piece of work from a best in the world team who are incredibly committed. I just feel like I tell them, I just feel like the luckiest woman on the planet to be working with them.
Oh, that's
So
amazing. Yeah, no, that's incredible. And I know it's a cliche, but when they say you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. I certainly feel that myself as an entrepreneur. And sometimes it is easy to put in those 60, 70-hour weeks if you're really passionate about what you do, you're passionate about the people that you work alongside and everything like that. So that's fantastic. To taking a step back for a second, you mentioned earlier you have obviously immigrant parents, you came from a lower sort of socio-economic background. How do you think that formed you, and what part did that play, do you think, in your life?
well, first of all, I believe very much in grit and hard work. You make your own luck. And I also believe in education as a transformative force for people. It helps you think, it helps you manage your own career. But I think that it's important to understand who you are and what makes you feel good. Just as one aside, Chris, I read Lord of the Rings 13 times as a child.
My favorite book of all time as well.
I read those 3 books 13 times because what I believed was that Gandalf the White and Aragorn, those guys who represented the good, actually could win. And it was an absolute stake in the ground for my life.
Mm.
So that reading really sort of carried me through. So that's what I would say, is that I think that hard work and belief carries you forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, personally, yeah, the Lord of the Rings, exactly the same. I couldn't tell you how many times I've read those books or seen the movies. Definitely a staple of my childhood as well. And yeah, kind of making your own, like, absolutely. There will be times when you'll get lucky, you'll get bad luck. But if you turn up every day and you work hard and you play things the right way and you're a high level of integrity and everything like that, just the luck will fall in your favor. It's 100%. One of the things that I found amazing about Venti is that you have 16 different nationalities in your staff. That's a huge spread of nationalities. How do you think that contributes to the culture that you've been able to build?
Well, it actually has been proven in the data that different perspectives create a better outcome. It's not a surprise if you think about it, because people see things different ways. And if you amalgamate all those different perspectives, you end up with a bigger, fuller scope in terms of what you're trying to accomplish. That's very much what we have. We don't care if you have green skin, brown skin, we don't care at all. We care about what's on the inside of our staff. I hire and interview every single person we have. It's important to me. And I look for someone who puts out what I think of in my mind as light. And each person has their own wavelength of light, but they put it out and you can just sense it. So we do that. But I think, for example, we've got people who do heavy mathematics. As you can imagine, they underpin the computation work that we do. We have people who are design and do the user interface to make it obvious and easy to use. And so as we amalgamate the different nationalities, we amalgamate the different perspectives on the world and the different expertise of our people. With respect to the specifics of the nationalities, when we have our Friday night parties, I just revel in talking to our different people about what's going on in their home country. I just absolutely love it. But we did not hire to do that. We just hired the best.
See, that's very interesting. That was going to be my next question: is how much of a conscious effort was it to do that? So you're saying it actually really wasn't. You just simply removed any bias or barrier to doing that and simply hired people based on talent and, like you said, seeing that light that they have.
Can I tell you something? One of my employees grew up in Kalimantan, Borneo. His father dug out the dugout canoe that he used. And if you ask this Ph.D. autonomy guy who grew up in the jungle what his best strength is, he will tell you it's catching monkeys.
Wow, that is amazing.
And he got
That's a
himself
great story.
he got himself a PhD from Asia, from a great institution, growing up in the jungle. So do I care? I care about him. Do I care he came
Mm.
from there? No, I think it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other part of having such a diverse workforce is it's a better representation of the world and a better representation of your customer base. So I think like the diversification of thought is incredibly important. And if you only have one demographic that works for your organization, your product and your marketing and everything typically will be geared towards that one demographic because that's the same way that everybody thinks. Whereas if you have a very broad spectrum of ideas and people from different walks of life and different ages and different countries and things like that, you will be more representative of the world that you are selling to, in my opinion. So it's also kind of there's such a huge bottom line impact by having a lot of those different ideas.
I think you're absolutely right. And the other thing that's interesting is that when you have people from such diverse backgrounds, they rub against the opinions and the ways that you live that you never knew you had. So, for example, you can have people who don't put themselves forward, but they have the best ideas. And that makes me learn, for example, that I have to ask. I have to look them in the eye carefully and ask. So I think it's a great learning experience for each member of our team to just get their edges rubbed off by their colleagues,
Mhm.
all because they come to this with integrity, as you said earlier, most important thing, and trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the people that I interviewed person earlier today, they're neurodivergent on the autism spectrum, and they were talking about the very similar thing, how companies, the more progressive companies, are able to set up scenarios and working environments that really allow them to thrive. And maybe there might be one person who isn't always going to put their hand in the air for an idea. There might be somebody else who works a lot better individually than part of a team. And having that kind of awareness of who is the quietest person in the room. Does that mean that they don't have the best ideas? No, it doesn't. It just means that maybe they need to be in a different room, or someone needs to elevate their opinion and their voice, which I find a bit very, very interesting.
We interrupt this podcast for a quick 30-second introduction to Intel, the host of Her Success. Intel is a US-based staffing agency specializing in engineering and technology. We have an insatiable passion for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And part of our mission is to balance the diversity scales in our industry. We are so tied to this mission that we donate $1,000 from every underrepresented placement made to our very own nonprofit, Diversify the Future. We then use the money to fund scholarships for underrepresented groups of people to help them obtain a STEM degree. If you're an engineer or a tech professional looking for a new position, or maybe a hiring talent for this space and want a recruitment partner, please get in touch.
My next question, you sort of answered this a little bit, I think, but I was going to ask you, what have you learned managing and overseeing so many different cultures?
I guess I've learned that the hardest thing to manage is myself. They taught me that at Harvard Business School, and they were right. And the reason is that where I put my attention is the choice. So out of everything that I should be doing, out of the 6 lives I wish I had concomitantly so I could get it all done, I have to make choices. And those choices come from 2 places. They come from thinking about it and really being on top of what's going on with the company, which is very hard. And they also come from a place of values. So it's interesting for me to talk to other CEOs and understand their values. Because in the end, you can be sitting in a quiet room with a bunch of alternatives. You don't know which one is the right one. You're utterly bamboozled. Like you've had a conversation with the team many times. You have to make a decision. And that's when a lot of your core values really come to the fore.
Mhm.
So I guess I've learned that. And I've also learned that just what we talked about earlier, when we have a cocktail party on a Friday afternoon, I make it a point to go around and talk to the people at all levels of my company
Mhm.
to hear what they think. And it is always a delight to me to get gobsmacked about the kinds of things that they tell me that I had no clue about and that
Mhm.
inform how I run the company.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
things.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's what I wanted to say is that talking to people, there's HBS, there was this something called management by wandering around. I wander around our cocktail parties.
Yeah, I mean, in England, we used to call it, yeah, pub management. You learn as much from speaking to the guy in the bar that's worked for the organization for 6 months as you do sitting next to your executive who you've worked with for 20 years and know exactly what they're going to say before they say it. Yeah, we did this at my last organization, reverse mentoring, when we would have someone, been with the organization for 2 or 3 years, mentor CEO and the CTO of the organization. And I always thought it was such a impactful project because just unless you make a real conscious effort as your company scales, it's very challenging to stay in the weeds that you were when you first started. I think unless you really make that conscious effort. Well, one of the things that companies often ask us, and we consult organizations on this, is how you create such a diverse culture. If you were to give advice to another CEO, maybe someone that has a company and they're not as diverse or as broad as they would want them to be, but they were wanting to improve that, what advice do you think you would give them?
I actually had experience with that. I ran an organization earlier in my life, it was a women's organization, and I took it over at a time of great change for the organization. It was at a real crossroads, and it was very obvious to me. And we had very few African Americans, and I led the board, and we made a commitment that we wanted to have these underrepresented groups in our organization to at least the statistics that they were in the Boston area.
Mhm.
And I'm embarrassed to tell this story, but I thought that I was able to bring in the African American people to this organization. And I figured I was president, right? Why shouldn't I? And it was an utter fail. And what I did was I found two African American leaders who were with us. And I asked them, I told them about my goals, my dreams, frankly, my values. This was an integrity thing for me. I was horribly embarrassed. This is where we were. And they took it on and wham, bam, they got it done like so fast. And that's what I would say. If you're serious about bringing on these underrepresented groups, just go find yourself some partners and let them go run, and they'll do the job. You can't,
Nice.
they can.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's great advice. I think so much of it is being aware of it and being honest about where you're at. Well, one of my good friends runs a diversity consulting firm, and she said exactly that. Firstly, you've got to be very honest, and no matter how embarrassing or whatever it is, like you've got to be aware of where you're at today and like get it out there. And then if you hire someone, whether it's a head of diversity or it's just a senior leader in the business that comes from that background and is passionate about that those two are the first steps to really kind of improving that. And obviously you've lived that. So yeah,
But I learned it
excellent.
there. Chris, I wanted to say something else that's along these lines. It's been another lesson for me. And that is listen really hard to the next generation. So I have kids now that are in their late 20s, mid to late 20s, and we all love our children. What's interesting is that I listen to them, and that has caused me to listen more strongly to my super young team members. We have a bunch of them that are in their 20s. I think we may even have a few that are under 20. And you normally spend all your time with your executive team, but let me tell you, the big ideas, many of them come from the young people.
Yeah.
And it's uncomfortable sometimes, not their age, but it's uncomfortable to believe that they don't have the world experience to be able to understand why what they're saying won't work, whatever. But you know what? They're often right. So
Yeah.
that was another big learning for me, is that the future really is the young people. And autonomous vehicles is a long game. And we believe that we're going to be doing it soon, frankly, but nonetheless, the utter transformation that autonomy will bring to the planet, our cities are going to be reborn. We're going to have less pollution because it's probably 40% of the vehicles compared to what we need today at 100% when it's fully autonomous. But that future, it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to my kids and my team members that are young. They're the ones who are going to tell their grandchildren they were here at the beginning of this dislocated technology.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah,
theirs.
no, 100%. And I think it's almost similar to what I was talking about earlier about again, like the map of the world. Like there are a lot of our customers and future customers are people that are in their 20s and maybe even younger than that. And some of the more progressive leaders that I've seen are those ones that can listen to people at all ends of the spectrum, right? There are people that, I mean, I think of the advice I've got from my 87-year-old grandma, right? It's very valuable advice, so much life experience that she has lived. And equally, someone that's coming out of college that's going to take over the world and has all this innovation and all these great ideas. If you're able to listen and kind of compartmentalize that and put it into a strategy. I think that's the kind of secret sauce, I guess.
I think so. Anyway, it's been fun for me. I learned so much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Tell me a challenge that you've faced in your career, and what advice would you give to someone that's facing something similar?
You know, there are always challenges, right? And there are always big challenges, and you just have to put one foot in front of the other. But I think the biggest challenge, I would say for myself, is how do you manage your family and time with your beloved children while you really want a very stellar and strong leading career? Because everything we do, success is kind of linear with time,
Mhm.
I think. Hard work for sure. And so how do you balance that? And each person has to do it in their own specific family way. I can only say that I thought about what my core values were. One of them for sure was raising my children.
Mhm.
And we implemented our lives so that I could have a career and I could also spend a lot of time with my kids. But I hear that over and over and over again from young women who really want a major career. And the last thing I'll tell you is that I had the enormous privilege of meeting Ruth Bader Ginsburg,
Oh,
who
wow.
was a US Supreme Court justice. And listening to her at a luncheon, I was lucky enough to actually just shake her hand. But she just looked at the audience and she just said, "Don't forget, somebody has to raise the children."
That sounds about right for RBG. Yeah.
Exactly. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm not alone.
Mm. That's amazing. And yeah, I 100% can see that. It's conversation. My wife and I, we don't have kids yet, but we want to. And she's an attorney. She works, she loves her career, but works very long hours. Obviously, being an entrepreneur, I kind of do as well myself. And it's always been a bit of a conversation that we've had is how are we going to balance this? Because we know that we want kids and we want to be there and put all the time and love into raising them, but we are also pretty ambitious people that are very kind of career forward. Her all-time hero is Ruth Bader Ginsburg, so I will be sure to tell her. I hope tonight that you had lunch with her. She'll be very impressed by that.
It's quite something. Well, I'm
Yeah.
not going to give you any advice other than to just keep at it.
Mhm. I think that's good advice. We're nearly at the end of our time here, which it's gone very quickly. It's been a really great conversation. I always finish up with this question, but you're working right on the cusp of innovation right now in the autonomous vehicle space. Tell me something that you're really excited about for 2024.
2024 will be transformative for Venti. We have wrangled our technology to the point where we can expand significantly and we can move into that, and we have global markets. So I would say that that level of expansion, which was dreamed of but not seen, is now here for us. And that beautiful team that I have that just works so hard, we're going to start a new level where our dreams are. So that's really what I'm looking for in 24. I'm also going to answer a question you didn't ask, which was, what are my dreams for what our technology can do? And it's where I started. Our technology will make a greener planet, and I'm personally very involved with the animals, the wild animals on the planet. And if we can work so that we can move the ships away from the whales and they don't kill all the whales by hitting them, because we can then tell them through autonomy where they can go. If we can green the cities and the urban environments, cut the pollution for the animals, I would be happy for that. feel like
That sounds, yeah, that's amazing. And I think when you think about autonomous vehicles, you think about AI, you almost don't connect what it can do. Like those examples there, I don't think you'd even think about like actually they can have such an impact in that kind of thing. So that's really, really exciting. And I'm sure a lot of the people listening to this will be watching your organization and cheering you on. I certainly will be, whether it's for you or the gentleman that you mentioned, whose biggest skill is catching monkeys. Yeah, fantastic story. But Heidi, yeah, that's all we have time for today. I mean, thank you so much. So that was a really great conversation. I think it was one of the more unique conversations we've had. I think your journey is incredible. The company you're building sounds like it will be world changing. So thank you so much for giving us your time.
Well, it's my pleasure, and thank you very much. Best wishes to you and your family for 2024. Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for dialing in, and hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did. We will be back in 2 weeks' time for our next episode, so dial in then.
Thank you so much for listening to today's Her Success podcast, brought to you by Intel. We hope you found it inspiring and insightful. For more conversations with inspirational women, why not check out our interviews from season 1? If you enjoy the podcast, please take a moment to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us grow and reach more listeners who can benefit from these empowering conversations. Don't forget to connect with us on LinkedIn at Her Success and follow us on Instagram at Her Success Community for a daily dose of inspiration. Want even more Her Success in your life? Sign up for our newsletter on our website to receive exclusive information on future episodes, blogs by our amazing guests, special features, upcoming events, and much more. Thank you for being a part of Her Success Community. Stay tuned for our next episode in 2 weeks' time.